Ripple and the Interledger protocol has no competition. What is the Interledger protocol? How do you connect 8 billion people and all of these different siloed payment systems together? That is, of course, Interledger protocol and XRP. This video will give you a basic understanding of why Interledger protocol is so important and how it interconnects with the global payment systems. Let's just jump right in.
So Interledger was a project that we invented while working at Ripple and then spun out as a separate open source project. And then Ripple's been paying a team of people to work on it full time for the past couple of years.
The challenge is for us to develop protocols that can allow us to make payments across those silos so that we can have payment systems, currencies, and protocols that are optimized for distinct use cases. That's what got Ripple interested in looking at protocols like Interledger.
But again, until you have the interoperability of money, which we don't have yet for 2 billion people, you're tantalized by it, but you can't act on it. That's a huge problem, right? So they know that we need, this key interoperability, this very basic infrastructure layer that links M-Pesa to Bank of America to what's going on in the Japanese financial system, and you don't have that, right? That's what's blocking a key thing happening here. And I think they agreed also that you need something like the Interledger protocol. That's what's baked into Loop, as well as many other very specific technologies that would help banks and central banks and governments in the developing world to, really kind of leap ahead.
If you wanted to visualize what Interledger looks like, you could draw it something like this, where it's basically, just like the internet is based around routers, Interledger is based around a very similar concept of connectors. And what they do is they receive these, what we call Interledger packets, which are just packets of data, and they look at a routing table, just like a router would, and then they decide which peer they want to forward that packet to. They might do a few things that routers don't do, such as the packet that's coming in has an amount on it, and the link that I have where the packet is coming in might be in a different denominator in a different currency than the link going out, and so I have to apply an exchange rate. But other than that, it is very similar to what an internet router would do. So that's where the connector is. There you go. All right. Now, we're sending just data around. So you might say, like, okay, well, how's there any movement of money? If we're just sending data, it's not really.
You see what they have here? They have ACH. They have SEPA, Single Euro Payments Area, this infrastructure for Europe, and the ACH system. It's just funny. Like, I always look in these examples that they give, right? Because these are probably real world examples that they're connecting all of this to. Let me just back this up 10 seconds. I probably shouldn't have stopped it there, but I just wanted to give you that initial context that I am seeing. Let me start right here so it's all fresh in your head. All right.
Now, we're sending just data around. So you might say, like, okay, well, how's there any movement of money? If we're just sending data, it's not really a payment network, it's just another internet, right? So the way that we actually introduce money is that at each link, we keep track of the packets that we've sent. So if we send, let's say, 1,000 packets of 10 units each, then we say, okay, now these connectors, this one connector on the left that sent all these packets owes the other connector some money. And it can pay that other connector through whatever means that they agreed on. And so they could pay each other through Bitcoin, or they could pay each other through Lightning Protocol, or through Ether, or whatever it is. They could even pay each other through cash if they want. And the main difference between what you choose is if it's a slower method like cash, if it's something more manual, more expensive, there's higher transaction costs, you would probably do it less often. And that means you have to have a little bit more trust. But if you use something like a digital asset, maybe one that has payment channels where you can settle literally, a thousandth of a cent and still have it be cost effective, you can settle all the time. You can settle after almost every packet. And so the trust required is basically negligible at that point.
With the Interledger protocol and with Ripple software and using XRP, we've created an internet of value.
It's unlikely, I think it's almost impossible, that there's going to be one blockchain that is this monolithic thing that is going to be what everybody across the entire world standardizes on. By definition, there will be different ledgers, different blockchains, different networks that exist. So putting the entire world on one blockchain, fundamentally, I don't think it makes sense.
Yep, not going to happen.
It's not how the world is starting to play out. I don't think it's how the world will end up being played out. So Ripple kind of pioneered this idea of how do you address that problem? How do you create interoperability between different ledgers, between different payment networks? And so we came up with a protocol, just like there was TCP/IP for the internet. Our engineering team has created something called the Interledger protocol, or ILP. And the idea being that these different networks, blockchain just being one, ACH, which is the sort of money, the intra-country check clearing, money moving network here in the United States. Visa is a network. You can argue that HSBC has a payments network, et cetera, et cetera. There are all these islands right now, and sure, you can ask each of these networks to move on the blockchain, but then they're just kind of copying what they're doing and putting it over on a blockchain. There's scalability issues that come up very quickly when that happens. So the idea is, just like the internet connected data networks around the world, there should be a standard, a protocol that connects these value networks, these payment networks. And that's really what the Interledger protocol that we've developed and is now open source. It's now out for other people to build on and improve on and deploy. But it sort of got its start within Ripple. And that's really the idea, is to create these networks. So now you can have interaction between the networks and create that efficiency, that interoperability of value that we'd argue is lacking, sort of that third component after the interoperability of goods, the interoperability of data. You need the interoperability of value. And just like you need standards for those others two, you need standards for this. And the ability to leverage something like the Interledger protocol to do that is super important. And so now here's the nice, pretty future state world. It's all interconnected and whatnot. We don't need to spend a lot of time on that.
Now, what it is and what makes it so beneficial.
Sure. So you can think of Interledger, it's kind of like what the internet does at its core is route packets of data across different information networks. What Interledger does is route little packets of money across different payment networks. So that could be blockchain networks, that could be individual blockchains like Ethereum, that could be payment channel networks like Lightning, that could be traditional banks or mobile money systems. So any type of payment network, and then Interledger is about routing packets of money across those.
Any type of payment network globally could be interconnected here through Interledger protocol. This is how you connect all of these siloed systems together using Interledger protocol and, of course, XRP.
I won't get into too much of how that works, but I want to walk through some of the cool things that this lets you do. So when we're applying this analogy with the internet, one of the things we get to is this idea of streaming payments. So if you broke up payments into little tiny chunks and could route these packets super efficiently, what you could end up with is this idea of streaming payments. So one of the things that could look like is, oh, you need to send a bigger payment? Okay, it depends on your payment bandwidth, which is a weird concept that we work with a lot, where that would be measured in dollars per second that you can send, or whatever currency you have. Some of the cool use cases that come out of this, things like streaming media. So today payments are super inefficient and clunky, and so we prefer, things like monthly subscriptions. I pay my $10 a month because I don't want to be bothered by this. If you made the payments super efficient and could do it on a very small basis, you could do things like paying for a second of video. So you're streaming me video, I'm streaming you money, and if I pause the video, I stop paying for it. If I walk away, I stop. If I come back and hit play again, keep streaming money, because it would be that efficient. Another cool thing that comes out of this is the idea of sign-up list services. Today in the physical world, when you walk into a shop and you want to have some financial exchange, the exchange normally goes, I give you money, you give me good or service, and I walk out. I don't need an account, I don't need to sign up, things like that. Today on the internet, you always need to sign up for accounts, because there's no way to do this very seamless. Here's a little bit of money, you give me a little bit of service, rinse and repeat. As a business, if you're giving me hosting services or something like that, you don't need to know who I am, you just need the money. And so with something like Interledger, you'd enable anybody to land money in your account, even if they're on some completely different payment network. So that would enable sign-up list services. Another neat idea we've been playing with is the idea of a creative marketplace license. So the idea here is, today we have Creative Commons license, which is awesome. If you want to give away your work, it's a really, really great project. One of the issues with Creative Commons is there's no way to have a license that's as easy to use where you can actually monetize your work. So the idea here is, with something like Interledger, you could actually have a license that says anybody can use this content, feel free to, but for every download or view or whatever kind of interaction you want to monetize, just pay me at this address. And the thing that's really missing today in order to do this is the assumption that just anybody could pay you. Because there's no interoperability and because we don't have internetworking for payments, if you did this kind of license, you'd be like, okay, anybody that has Bitcoin can now pay me, which is a tiny subset of everybody. The thing that makes the internet work is that everybody can access it quality. Last kind of fun thing to throw out there is, if you connect every type of currency and payment network together, what you can enable is payments from weird currencies. So today you use dollars because everyone else accepts dollars here. If everything's connected, you could pay with stocks, community currency, local currency, crypto, whatever you prefer.
That is the best explanation video I've ever seen of Interledger protocol. Why it's important. Interledger protocol functions as a universal connector, or the internet of value, allowing isolated networks like banks, blockchains, and payment platforms to interact, just as the internet connects separate local networks for seamless information sharing. That is incredible. All right, I don't need to read all this stuff to you. We just went through it in that video here. This Cas Laurens clip was part of this video. I don't need to play that as well, but this is a great clip here too. Interledger protocol, Stephen Thomas, former Ripple CTO and co-creator of Interledger protocol. Listen to this.
We configured our technology in a way that really fits the problem of cross-border payment security very, very well. So for the cross-border payment challenge, we've created an open internet model. We call the idea Interledger. So Interledger, like the internet, supports a Ripple technology globally. And that model does not require a single universal common blockchain. It requires a very open blockchain interconnectivity. And that means that the volume is theoretically infinite. It's like the internet never runs out of the elements of the internet still works because it's inherently decentralized. So Ripple is the same. So we have a decentralized model which is infinitely scalable. Supporting that, we have our liquidity proposition which uses XRP, and that's a classic blockchain. But XRP was designed from the outset for transacting. Unlike the likes of Bitcoin, which is like very slow and slows down as you continue to build on volume, the XRP model is very, very, very high speed and very high capacity. So the liquidity part is very adequately served by the XRP model. The wider network we're creating, where if you're really going to create something of value for 7 billion people in the world or 9 billion by 2050.
No, I tend to agree. I think mass adoption doesn't happen with self-custody. There needs to be the right balance of centralisation and decentralisation. We can't forget centralisation makes sense on so many levels. It's convenience, it's scalable, it's more efficient. It's the pure trust factor that when central parties get too much power, too much control, there is a tendency to abuse that over time. And that's not an outlandish statement, that's just a statement of fact. So I agree with Joe, like mass adoption will occur over time. Maybe there's a decentralized wallet app technology that allows that scalability. But ultimately, I think if assets like Bitcoin become more mainstream currencies, I'd probably be more inclined to expect to see it pop up in your internet banking as another line item next to your currency account. At the end of the day, the current financial system transacts on IOUs. It doesn't transact real value. Yeah. You know, tap and go with your credit card to buy your coffee. It's convenient, right? Whether I settle my credit card bill at the end of the month in US dollars, Bitcoin, rocks, gold, it's irrelevant. It's a single bulk transfer of value at the end of the month.
My man said rocks. You like settle it in clams or something? All right, Ripple's Interledger protocol infrastructure and patents ensure it has no competition in the entire crypto landscape. On the most interesting aspects regarding Interledger protocol, it is that it will seamlessly manage payments when a sender's currency is different from the receiver's currency, or when the sender's payment network is different from the receiver's payment network. For instance, a payment is issued on the fiat currency network using MasterCard, Visa, or wire transfer and the receiver receives it in an account also known as a wallet created within a payment system using cryptocurrency. The Interledger protocol offers a means to bridge the cryptocurrencies and fiat to enable interoperable and fast value exchange. They rely on the plugins for settlement over a digital asset like the XRP ledger. Banks and other financial institutions can now carry out international transactions more quickly and affordably thanks to Ripple's patented RippleNet, a blockchain-based cross-border payment system. By securing a patent for its technology, Ripple guarantees sole authority of its inventive payment system, prohibiting rivals from unauthorized use of compatible blockchain networks, which means there is only one Interledger protocol, and Ripple holds all the keys. And this is how you interconnect all of this together, right? You have RippleNet, you have RLUSD, Interledger protocol, you have payment providers, you have cryptocurrency exchanges, EVM sidechains, central bank digital currencies, remittent providers, ISO 20022 payment systems, real world assets. How do you bring it all together? Say it with me, Interledger protocol. Let's go. All right, let's finish up here because I don't want this video to go too long. Here is the Cas Laurens, and the CEO of Arlington Capital.
Rather than being an internet system. So we need that internet of value to be developed. And that's what we spend our time working on, is a replacement for SWIFT and correspondent banking. How do you get all of the payment providers, all of the wallets onto ILP? And then how do you use XRP as on-demand liquidity so that all of these providers don't have to keep balances all over the world because the process is so inefficient. We think that's the winning kind of killer app. And then I think last group talked about a Cambrian explosion. Yeah. Then you get that Cambrian explosion.
Then you get that Cambrian explosion, guys. This is how the world is interconnected with XRP. I'm so glad you're with me on this journey. Thank you for watching. If you got any value, you can like the video, leave a comment down below, share the video with a friend. Either way, I appreciate your time. I hope you have a fantastic week ahead and a happy holidays. I'm Crypto Sensei. Aloha.